there aren't too many wheelchair accessible gold mines around. So the only thing I could do is get more education. Where it would go, I have no idea. So I wrote, I went to do my MBA, but to do that, you have to write the GMAT. At that time, it was only offered 4 times a year. So the GMAT people at the time said there's no way I could write the GMAT. They would give me a scribe and some extra time. But of course it wasn't enough. And the scribe didn't even know what the difference between a parallel line and perpendicular line. Like, it was just like a maddening experience. But did it, went through it. I applied to the U of M, and they have boxes. Now, this is going to be one of the controversial issues that you guys are going to talk about today. Boxes for, are you disabled? Do you belong to a certain group? Are you, I never checked those boxes, ever, ever, ever. And the logic for me is, if I can't get in on my merits on a meritorious basis, I probably shouldn't get in. But I got in, and then what do? There's no idea how to turn a page. Cannot turn a page in a book. A book is the most complicated piece of technology if you can't move. It's a brilliant piece of technology, but if you can't. So painstakingly for 4 years, page by page, and it was mindful reading because I only had one shot. So I had to relearn how to learn. And slowly ended up, I got my MBA while I was I was still very young there, I was 23. So I ran with my brother for the student union presidency and vice presidency. And we won. And that was an affirmation that, well, wait, maybe people will vote for someone in my situation, because of course you hear all the things. Now, anyone who's worked with persons with disabilities, or you have a disability, you've heard these things. So when I ran federally, and I had to go through 2 contested nominations and run against the mayor of Winnipeg, which was a guy named Glenn Murray. But when you're doing, you call up, so well, Mr. Fletcher, I appreciate our conversation. I've seen pictures of you. You don't sound disabled. Or how about, how are you going to go door knocking? I can explain it, but the best way is just to do it. So I made sure I door knocked on more doors. I was the first one up, last one to go, that type of thing. And I remember being on the local radio station, CGOB, and they said to me, Mr. Fletcher, you are running in a Liberal seat against a nationally known candidate, the mayor of Winnipeg, guaranteed to go into cabinet. Why would anyone vote for you, especially in your condition, whatever my condition is, over the other guy, or over the other candidates? And I simply said, Larry, the people of Charleswood St. James would rather have someone paralyzed from the neck down than the neck up. kind of an edgy comment, and I may not politically correct, but the point is this. I was running to be a politician. I'm not trying out for the football team. I'm not trying to play for the Winnipeg Jets, because that would be ridiculous. I was offering a skill set that I thought might be valuable to society. And plus, engineers, or Angus and I were talking about engineering rings and so on, but engineers don't go into politics. And there's a lot of good reasons for that, because I think first, they can make a lot more money outside of politics, and they can't understand the logic of politics, because there is no logic in politics, and it would just drive the average person insane. But when we talk about diversity of skill set, of life experience, is often very important. If you judge diversity on appearance, in many cases, that's one kind of diversity, but I would say a more valuable type of diversity is the skill sets that an individual can bring to your organization, to your company, or to the House of Commons, or wherever you are in society, or to the classroom. So I get elected, it was a big upset, and go to Ottawa. And again, there was a time where glorious moment. I'm going into the chamber. I'm showing my parents, we can't believe, really, we can't believe it, because, just a few, I'm 32, I'm in the House of Commons, just went through this whole thing. And a senator comes into the chamber, all excited for me, very friendly, and starts patting me on the head. Okay, that's no problem. And a lot of strange things like that happened. Over time, the first few months, I realized, well, wait a second. These MPs and senators, by the way, it was a Liberal senator, not just whatever, for what it's worth. Have never dealt with someone who is disabled. They may have met someone like Rick Hansen, but they actually have never dealt with. And then the media, none of their media, when they have the conventions or press conference, none of those places are wheelchair accessible. So one cannot actually get onto the stage when they're doing the interviews with Peter Mansbridge or whatever. The press gallery still isn't accessible. So there are many, many problems. So here we have a situation where the people who are making the laws and the people reporting on those making the laws are in an echo chamber. They don't see what is the reality. Sometimes it works very well, but out of sight, out of mind. So being elected clued in a lot of people. Not everyone, but a lot of people. I also want to point out some important things just about disability in general. And this is, when I was injured, they told me if I was going to live, I'd be in an institution for the rest of my life. And the institution that they recommended was Deer Lodge. So that sucks. Anyway, it was a bad situation, but we need to have in society the supports so that people who need it can get the support to get out of bed, to have transportation, not to have stairs in kooky places. Why do we have stairs anyway? On ground level. The elevators that are appropriate. These systemic things need to be done, and they are being done, not as fast as we'd like, but they are being done. The reason why this is so important to what you're trying to do is out of sight, out of mind, in sight, in mind. So the more people with disabilities who are in society, the more society will benefit and the more opportunities there will be for everyone. It's a chicken and egg thing. Well, we can't hire someone with a disability because there's no transportation for him or her. Well, that's not the company's fault. That's our fault as society. So there is accommodations that need to be made. So accommodation. I don't know how I'm doing for time here, but could someone just tell me? Maybe you could whisper it in my ear if you like. You have about 12 minutes left. Okay. And if you want to, just go till you're comfortable. Okay. Apparently I've been talking too long already. She told me to stop, get off the stage. But I refuse. I'm a person. There was accommodation that needed to be made. So some of them were pretty simple. Stranger in the house. You can't have someone who's not elected in the House of Commons. This goes back to when Charles I got his head cut off for being naughty way back in the day. So they had to change the rule to allow my caregiver to sit next to me in the House of Commons. And this was a big deal at the time. But really, it's not big of a deal. But it was at the time. And because I need 24-hour care all the time. That includes in the house. They had to make a little nook for me in one of the chairs. Funny story, true story. I was in opposition in 2004, right next to the speaker's chair. And when you're in opposition, you're on the left-hand side of the speaker, and then when you're in government, you're on the right-hand side. And the parliamentary architect, went into all the details about my spot in this corner and everything. And I said, Claude, his name was Claude, all these renovations you made are temporary. And he looked at me and I said, yeah, because in a few months, I'll be in the government side of the house. And so, he kind of laughed and then I said, Claude, and when that happens, I'm going to be the speaker. And if you want to ever see an architect go apoplectic on what would have to be done to accommodate that, that's what you do. But there are other things that people got over. Going to the parliamentary restaurant, where I'm here with all my colleagues and very important people, and people who think they're very important anyway. And the waiter come around and ask my caregiver if I wanted fries with that steak. Ask my caregiver. And that happens all the time. And, my caregiver's like, he's the member of parliament, or he's the minister, maybe you should ask him. So there's still a ways to go. And people do make assumptions, and often the assumptions are wrong. I bet I bet there are people in this room that made the assumption that because I'm in a wheelchair, I must be a supporter of the NDP. Or maybe on the edge, a liberal. On the edge, maybe. But when people find out I'm a conservative, and just like I am a conservative, that takes them aback because they've stereotyped. They've made assumptions. Disability means a lot of things. And we even got to invisible disabilities or mental health issues. But we're not monolithic. We don't agree. I got into I championed physician-assisted death in Parliament, and the disability community, the established disability community, was all over me on that. I thought of Sue Rodriguez. There are some situations where all the resources in the world cannot help. The people in the disability community were worried, in part because, they know there aren't enough resources, but are people going to be forced to or be somehow killed because they need resources? My answer to that is, well, yeah, we have something we already deal with that. It's called murder, and it's in the criminal code. So it's a very important difference. But there was a difference within the disabled community, no question about it. I'm all about empowerment. Empowerment of the individual. My choice. I'm the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. And I'll be damned if the state tells me what to do. As long as I stay within the boundary of the law, I do need help. But after that, please leave me alone so I can do and live my life. And I think those people out there, many people in the disabled community would agree with that. From the beginning to the end. Now I know I'm running out of time here, so let me make a few observations. The people of my riding elected me, and that says far more about the people of my riding than does about me. They were open-minded. They did judge on ability, and they re-elected me 4 times over. Until that cannabis issue came up. By the way, is it true that Nelson is the capital of pot in British Columbia? That's what I was told. Hey, I guess you guys were ahead of the curve. I don't know. Predicting the future. But anyway, Stephen Harper, who's a friend, a gentleman, and a very good guy, is also very progressive. He brought me into the shadow cabinet in opposition with my caregiver. He brought me into the ministry, the parliamentary secretary. Then he brought me into cabinet. And I would have meetings with Stephen Harper with my caregiver in the room. Just the two of us. Or he put me on cabinet committees. I was on lots of cabinet committees. Economic sustainability and development, and social affairs, and this and that. And Treasury Board. Critically, he put me, I was the longest serving person on Treasury Board. This is about 5 people who many of the powers of the federal government are exercised. It's not necessarily through cabinet, it's Treasury. And even when I left cabinet, after 5 years, he left me on Treasury board with my caregiver. People would give their left arm, their first child, to be in these meetings. But not my caregivers. They could not care less. And that's probably a good thing. But they were there to help me. They weren't into for the public policy. So I'm going to conclude with two more observations. One, when I was elected to Parliament, I did go back to those medical professionals who told me I'd be institutionalized. Because I don't think they've ever imagined that institution would be the Parliament of Canada. And the second thing I'll say is, sometimes in politics, you're in, sometimes you're out. Most of the time you don't know if you're in or you're out, and you don't know who is. And I was honored to have the opportunity to be in cabinet during a crazy time, like during the economic recession. I was sitting next to Jim Flaherty and Ronna Ambrose trying to figure out how Canada is going to get out of what was like the worst thing that probably any of our generation from an economic point of view. So that was great to have that experience. Not great necessarily to go through it, but to help based on skill set, not how fast I can run. And I will conclude by saying this. Stephen Harper took me out of cabinet, which is his prerogative. Things change. Skill sets that are needed change. And what I said when this was announced is that I am a conservative. I am a traditionalist. And I wish I left cabinet in the traditional way, with a sex scandal. So thank you very much.